The sun was already burning the prairie when Jim Blake pulled his horse to a sudden stop. Dust hung thick in the air ahead of him, drifting like smoke. At first, he thought it was a broken wagon or a dead steer left to rot. Then he heard it, a weak, broken gasp, barely louder than the wind. Jim narrowed his eyes and urged his horse forward. There, in the open field just outside Dodge City, a young woman was tied to a wooden post. Her wrists were bound above her head, rope cutting into sunburned skin. Her dress was torn, her lips cracked and bleeding. She swayed slightly, fighting to stay upright, her shadow shrinking beneath her as the sun climbed higher. Jim's jaw tightened. Everyone in Kansas knew what this meant. Sheriff's punishment. He dismounted slowly, boots crunching against dry earth. One glance told him she'd been here for hours, maybe longer. No water, no shade, no mercy. "Hey," Jim said carefully, his voice low but firm. "Can you hear me?" Her head lifted with effort. One eye was swollen shut, but the other locked onto his with sudden fear. "Please," she whispered. "Don't leave." Jim felt something twist hard in his chest. He looked around. No deputies, no witnesses, just open land and silence. The kind of silence that kept men alive when they minded their own business. He knew the law here. Sheriff Eli Thompson enforced it personally and without appeal. Anyone found stealing was punished publicly. Anyone interfering became an accomplice. Jim reached for his knife, then hesitated. "What did you do?" he asked. Her voice shook. "I took money from the sheriff's safe." Jim froze. That was a death sentence. She swallowed, gathering strength. But it wasn't his. "I saw him kill a Wells Fargo courier. Shot him in the back. Took the money and blamed me." The words hit harder than the heat. Jim stood there, torn between everything he believed and everything he'd been taught to survive. He was a rancher, not a hero. A man who followed rules because rules kept chaos away. But as he looked at the rope biting into her wrists, at the blood drying on her skin, one thought burned louder than the sun above them. If this was justice, then something was deeply wrong. And in that moment, Jim Blake made a decision that would turn Dodge City against him. Jim's knife sliced through the rope with a single clean motion. The girl collapsed forward, and he caught her just before her knees hit the dirt. She was lighter than he expected, too light. Her body trembled uncontrollably, not from fear alone, but from exhaustion and dehydration. "Easy," Jim muttered, lowering her carefully to the ground. He pulled a canteen from his saddle and held it to her lips. Small sips. She drank like someone afraid the water might disappear if she paused. Jim scanned the horizon again. Still no one. But Dodge City wasn't far, and Sheriff Thompson's men rode these lands like hounds. "What's your name?" Jim asked. "Rose," she whispered. "Rose Miller." The name meant nothing to him, but the way she said it, like it was the last thing she owned, stayed with him. He cut the remaining rope and wrapped his jacket around her shoulders to shield her from the sun. His hands moved on instinct, faster than his thoughts. Only when she was free did the weight of what he'd done crash down on him. He had just defied the sheriff. There was no undoing that. "Can you ride?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "I think so." Jim lifted her onto his horse, then mounted behind her, keeping his body between hers and the open plain. As they started moving, dust rose behind them, not just from their hooves, but from the consequences chasing close behind. "You understand what happens now," Jim said quietly. "The sheriff won't let this go." Rose laughed bitterly. "He already tried to kill me." That answer settled something in Jim's chest. They rode toward his ranch instead of town. If he was going to be hunted, it wouldn't be on the sheriff's ground. Behind them, far in the distance, a rider appeared. Jim didn't need a spyglass to know who it was. Sheriff Eli Thompson reined his horse hard when he saw the empty post. The rope lay severed in the dirt. His smile vanished. "Son of a," he growled, scanning the prairie until he spotted the retreating figures on the horizon. One horse, two riders. Jim Blake. The sheriff's eyes darkened. Jim wasn't a criminal. That made him dangerous. Back in Dodge City, Thompson wasted no time. Within the hour, word spread like wildfire. A thief had escaped punishment, helped by a rancher who thought he knew better than the law. By sunset, Jim Blake's name was on every tongue. At the Blake Ranch, Jim helped Rose inside and sat her near the stove. Though the day was still hot, he cleaned the cuts on her wrists in silence. "Why help me?" she finally asked. "You don't know me." Jim met her eyes. "I know what leaving you there would have made me." Outside, hooves thundered closer. A deputy dismounted and called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Jim Blake, Sheriff Thompson requests your presence. Return the girl, and this can end clean." Jim stepped onto the porch, rifle hanging at his side, not raised, but visible. "Tell the sheriff," Jim replied evenly, "that I'm not returning an innocent woman to be murdered." The deputy hesitated. "You're choosing sides." Jim nodded once. "Seems the sheriff already did." The deputy rode off fast. Inside the house, Rose realized the truth with sudden clarity. Because of her, a good man had crossed a line that could never be erased. And Dodge City was about to make him pay for it. By morning, Dodge City had chosen its side. Jim Blake's name moved through the streets faster than the dust. In the saloon, men lowered their voices when it was spoken. On porches, women watched the road that led to the Blake Ranch, waiting to see which way the trouble would ride. Sheriff Eli Thompson stood near the jail, calm as ever. "She stole from the law," he said to anyone who listened. "And Blake helped her escape punishment. That makes him no better." No one asked what punishment meant anymore. Fear did the asking for them. Before noon, the posse was formed. Not all of them were cruel men. Some had families. Some owed favors. Some were simply afraid of what happened when the sheriff decided you were an example. At the ranch, Jim worked in silence. He reinforced the door, counted his ammunition, and kept one eye on the horizon. Rose sat at the small table, her hands wrapped around a tin cup she hadn't touched. "You should let me go," she said finally. "They won't stop until they get me." Jim shook his head. "That's not how this works. They already decided I'm guilty." He sat across from her. "I need the whole story." Rose swallowed and nodded. She spoke of the evening the Wells Fargo courier arrived late, of staying behind to finish accounts, of hearing a gunshot behind the office. When she ran outside, she saw the courier dead in the dirt and Sheriff Thompson standing over him. He didn't panic, she said. He smiled, said no one would believe me. Her voice dropped. "So I took the money. I thought it would force the truth out." Jim felt his stomach tighten. Outside, the sound of distant hooves carried on the wind. "They're coming," Rose whispered. Jim stood rifle in hand. "Then it's time someone listened." The posse arrived as the sun dipped low, turning the sky the color of dried blood. 10 riders spread out in front of the ranch. Rifles rested across saddles. No one dismounted right away. They wanted Jim to feel surrounded. "Jim," a voice called out. "Come out and talk." Jim stepped onto the porch, lantern light framing him in shadow. "Talking's all I ever wanted." Sheriff Thompson rode forward slowly, reins loose in his hand. "You disappointed me," the sheriff said. "I thought you understood order." Jim met his eyes. "I understand right and wrong." Thompson's expression hardened. "Hand over the girl." Instead, Jim raised his voice so every man could hear. "Ask him about the Wells Fargo courier. Ask him why the money never arrived." The men shifted uneasily. Thompson laughed once, sharp and cold. "You're desperate." "Am I?" Jim replied. "Then why punish a witness instead of answering questions?" For a moment, the night held its breath. Then a distant horn sounded across the plains. Not from Dodge City. Federal. Riders emerged from the darkness. Uniforms marked with authority that didn't answer to the sheriff. At their front rode a man with a polished badge and unreadable eyes. "Sheriff Eli Thompson," the agent announced. "You are ordered to stand down pending investigation." The posse froze. Thompson's jaw tightened, but for the first time he said nothing. Jim felt no relief, only the weight of what was coming. The law had finally arrived, and it was about to tear everything open. The federal riders didn't bring relief. They brought tension sharp, enough to cut skin. Sheriff Eli Thompson stood between two worlds now. Behind him was the town he ruled with quiet fear. In front of him stood men who didn't owe him loyalty, favors, or silence. "This is my jurisdiction," Thompson said evenly. "You have no authority here." The federal agent dismounted, boots hitting dirt with deliberate calm. "We have authority wherever federal money and dead couriers are involved." A ripple moved through the posse. Several men shifted in their saddles. This was not what they signed up for. Jim stayed on the porch, rifle lowered but ready. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "You buried him outside town," Jim said. "Near the dry creek." Thompson's eyes snapped to him. "Careful, rancher." Rose stepped forward before Jim could stop her. Her knees shook, but she didn't fall. "I saw his face," she said. "I saw the blood on the sheriff's boots. I heard the shot." The sheriff laughed, a sharp, practiced sound. "She's lying to save herself." The agent studied Rose closely. "You took the money?" "Yes," she answered. "Every dollar." The serial numbers match Wells Fargo records. That did it. Thompson's hand moved slightly toward his holster, not fast but intentional. Jim raised his rifle halfway. "Don't." For one breathless second, no one moved. 10 rifles. One mistake away from slaughter. "Sheriff," the agent ordered, "step away from your weapon." Slowly, Thompson complied. His jaw tightened, eyes burning with restrained fury. "You're making a mistake," he said. "This town needs me." The agent replied coldly, "This town survived despite you." Cuffs snapped shut around Thompson's wrists. The man who had never been questioned was finally silent. But Jim felt no relief, only the certainty that the worst part was still ahead. Dodge City didn't sleep that night. Windows glowed late. Groups whispered on corners. The arrest of Sheriff Thompson didn't heal the town, it split it wide open. Some called Jim a hero. Others called him a traitor. Rose was placed under federal guard in a small room near the jail. Jim wasn't allowed inside, but he waited nearby anyway, leaning against the wooden wall like a man expecting a bullet. The agent joined him after midnight. "You understand what happens next," he said. "There will be hearings, witnesses, people will change their stories." Jim nodded. "I know. If your testimony breaks," the agent continued, "the sheriff walks free. And you won't." Jim looked up. "I didn't do this halfway." Inside his cell, Thompson sat with his back to the wall. Hands chained, posture still proud. When Jim passed, the sheriff spoke softly. "You think you won," Thompson said. "This town runs on fear. Take me away, and it will just find someone else." Jim stopped. "Maybe, but tonight, it's not you." Thompson smiled thinly. "You saved a girl. Lost everything else. Outside, Rose waited, wrapped in a blanket. When she saw Jim, her eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted this," she said. Jim nodded. "Neither did I. But you still stayed," she whispered. Jim looked at the town, at the place where obedience had once been mistaken for peace. "Someone had to," he said. Above them, the night felt heavy, charged with unfinished justice. The truth was finally exposed. Now it would demand a price. The days after the arrest were harder than the night itself. With Sheriff Thompson behind bars, Dodge City should have breathed easier. Instead, the town grew tense, like a rope pulled too tight. People avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped when Jim entered a room. The truth was no longer a rumor, it was a threat. The federal investigation moved slowly, deliberately. Witnesses were called. Records were examined. And with every step forward, resistance grew stronger. Rose felt it first. A woman she once worked beside crossed the street to avoid her. A shopkeeper refused to serve her without explanation. Even under federal watch, Rose sensed the shift. The town had decided she was dangerous. "They're trying to erase me," she told Jim one evening. Jim nodded. "They're trying to make you doubt yourself." That night, a note was slipped under Rose's door. "Recant or disappear." No signature. Jim crushed the paper in his fist. "This is how they win," he said. "Not with bullets. With fear." The next morning, a witness changed his statement. Claimed he never saw the courier arrive. Another suddenly remembered being out of town that night. The truth began to bend under pressure. The federal agent confronted Jim. "People are scared. They're loyal to the badge, not the man." Jim replied quietly, "Then they were never loyal to the law." By sunset, news spread that Wells Fargo was sending representatives. Money had a way of accelerating justice or burying it. Rose sat alone, staring at her hands. "What if I break?" She asked Jim, "What if I can't do this?" Jim looked at her for a long time. "Then they don't just take your voice," he said. "They teach the town that truth isn't worth surviving." Outside, someone laughed in the street. It sounded like a warning. Pressure came from every direction. The agent informed Jim that if Rose's testimony wavered, the case would collapse. Circumstantial evidence alone wouldn't hold a respected sheriff. Not without a witness willing to stand firm. That night, Jim found Rose packing. "I can't stay," she said, tears streaking her face. "They're watching me. Every step, every breath." Jim didn't stop her. He only asked, "Where will you go?" "I don't know," she admitted. "But at least I'll be alive." Jim stepped closer. "You won't be free." She looked up sharply. "They'll own the story," Jim continued. "They'll say you lied, that the sheriff was innocent, that this never happened." Rose's hands trembled. "I never wanted to be brave." Jim softened. "Neither did I." Before she could answer, shouting erupted outside. A man had been beaten near the stables. A warning, whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. The agent arrived moments later. "This town is turning," he said grimly. "If you're going to stand, it has to be now." Rose looked at Jim, not as a savior, but as someone equally trapped by choice. "If I speak," she said slowly, "they'll hate me forever." Jim nodded. "But they'll remember." Silence stretched between them. Then Rose unpacked her bag. "I'll testify," she said, "no matter what it costs." Jim felt a cold knot tighten in his chest, because he knew the price was about to be collected, and Dodge City was done pretending it wouldn't draw blood. The day of Rose's testimony arrived under a low, colorless sky. Dodge City gathered without admitting it was gathering. Men lingered near the courthouse. Women watched from windows. No one spoke openly, but everyone waited for the same thing, to see whether the truth would survive the day. Jim walked beside Rose, feeling the weight of every stare. Federal guards flanked them, yet it did little to quiet the tension. Protection could stop a bullet, not a town's hatred. Inside, the room smelled of sweat and old wood. Sheriff Thompson sat at the defense table, clean, composed, almost relaxed. When his eyes met Jim's, there was no anger, only confidence. Rose took the stand. Her voice shook at first, but she spoke clearly. She described the courier, the shot, the sheriff's smile. She named the place where the body had been buried. Every word felt like stepping deeper into fire. Then the defense stood. They questioned her memory, her motives, her character. "You stole the money, correct?" The lawyer asked. "Yes." "So you're a criminal." "I stole proof." Murmurs filled the room. The lawyer smiled thinly. "Or you stole out of greed and invented a story when you were caught." Rose faltered. Jim felt it, the moment her strength wavered. Then a witness was called. A man who had once told Jim he heard the gunshot. On the stand, the man shook his head. "I never heard anything. I was drunk that night." Jim's stomach dropped. One by one, statements unraveled. Fear rewrote memory. By noon, the room felt colder. Rose stepped down from the stand, pale and exhausted. Thompson leaned back, satisfied. The truth was standing alone. That night, Dodge City made its decision. A rock shattered Jim's window just after dark. Then another. Someone shouted from the street, words too angry to understand. But the meaning was clear. "Go." Federal guards moved in fast, pushing the crowd back before violence turned final. Rose stood frozen in the corner, her face drained of color. "This is because of me," she said. "I'm tearing your life apart." Jim looked at the broken glass, at the home he had built piece by piece. "No," he replied quietly. "This is because they don't want to change." Later, the agent pulled Jim aside. "The case is slipping," he admitted. Without more, Thompson walks. Jim stared at the dirt. "There has to be something." "There is," the agent said. "But it's risky." He explained quietly. The burial site had never been officially confirmed. If they exhumed the body and matched the bullet to Thompson's gun, the case could be saved. But the sheriff's supporters would see it as desecration, provocation. "And if we don't?" Jim asked. "Then the town forgets," the agent answered. That night, Rose packed again. "I can't watch you lose everything," she said. "If I leave now, maybe the town calms down." Jim shook his head. "They'll just learn that pressure works." Rose's voice broke. "I'm so tired." Jim felt the same exhaustion in his bones. For the first time, doubt crept in, not about what was right, but about whether it was survivable. Outside, the town settled into an uneasy quiet, the kind that comes before something breaks. And Jim realized they were running out of time. Either the truth would surface completely, or it would be buried forever. The court recessed under a cloud of uncertainty. No verdict, no closure, just delay, the kind that slowly suffocates hope. By morning, Dodge City had already rewritten the story. In the saloon, men said the girl was unstable. On the streets, whispers claimed the rancher wanted attention. The truth didn't disappear. It was pushed into corners until it no longer mattered. Sheriff Thompson walked the courthouse halls unshackled, a free man awaiting final judgment. He tipped his hat to passers-by, calm and polite, the picture of restored authority. When Jim saw him laugh with a group of townsmen, something inside him cracked. The agent met Jim later that day, his voice low. "Without physical evidence, we can't hold him much longer." Jim nodded slowly. He had expected this. Still, it hurt. Rose stayed inside, curtains drawn. She barely spoke. When Jim entered, she didn't look up. "They won," she said flatly. Jim wanted to argue, wanted to promise things he wasn't sure he could deliver. Instead, he sat across from her in silence. "I keep replaying it," Rose continued. "Every word, every pause. If I had spoken better, stronger." Jim shook his head. This wasn't about truth. It was about comfort. That evening, the federal guards were reduced. Temporary, they said. That night, footsteps circled the house. Jim didn't sleep. Just before dawn, Rose stood in the doorway with her bag. "I'm leaving," she said, "before someone decides to finish this." Jim closed his eyes. This was the moment he had feared. Jim rode with Rose as far as the old crossroads. The sky was pale, empty, indifferent. She stopped her horse and looked back once, at the town that had taken everything from her. "I thought telling the truth would set me free," she said. Jim answered softly, "Sometimes it just shows you who you are." She reached into her coat and hesitated. "There's something I never told anyone." Jim looked at her. "When I took the money," she said, "I also took his ledger. Wells Fargo's internal book. I hid it near the burial site." Jim's heart jumped. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I was scared," she admitted. "And because if they found it on me, I'd be dead." Jim realized what this meant. The evidence had existed all along. Rose pressed a small piece of paper into his hand, a rough map drawn from memory. "If you go there," she said, "you'll be alone." Jim nodded. "I've been alone since I cut that rope." They stood there for a long moment, neither wanting to be the first to turn away. "Whatever happens," Rose said, "thank you for seeing me." Then she rode east. Jim watched until she disappeared into the dust. He unfolded the map. For the first time in days, purpose returned. If the town wouldn't face the truth willingly, then he would drag it into the light himself, even if it destroyed what little he had left. Jim rode through the prairie under a sky streaked with red. The map clutched in one hand, rifle in the other. Every mile carried the weight of Dodge City's distrust, the sheriff's influence, and the knowledge that one wrong step could be fatal. The burial site was miles from any road, hidden among a line of dry creek beds and scrub. Jim dismounted, scanning the ground. His boots crunched over stones and dry grass as he followed the sketch Rose had drawn. Each detail mattered: a jagged rock, a fallen tree, a sun-bleached fence post. The ledger had been hidden beneath one of these landmarks, buried with the evidence of the courier's murder. Hours passed as Jim searched, sweat drying on his face, muscles aching. The sun climbed high, then dipped low, yet he persisted. His mind raced with possibilities. What if the ledger was gone? What if someone else had already found it? What if the sheriff's supporters were already on his trail? Then, just as the sun touched the horizon, his boot hit something hard in the soil. Jim dropped to his knees, brushing dirt away with shaking hands. There it was, a small metal box, rusted but intact. He pried it open and found the ledger, the serial numbers, and papers that mapped the courier's route. Proof. A sudden crack of a branch made him freeze. Shadows moved across the ground, unfamiliar and deliberate. Jim's rifle went up, heart pounding. Looking for something? A voice called from the trees. Two men stepped into the clearing, armed and grim-faced. Thompson's men. They had tracked him. Jim's mind raced. He could fight, but even if he survived, the ledger might be lost. He had to think faster than they could shoot. He raised his hands, showing the ledger. "I'm leaving with this," he said calmly. "I don't want trouble, but I'm taking what proves your boss is guilty." The men exchanged a glance. One laughed. The sheriff doesn't like thieves. Blake, you're about to learn why. Gunfire erupted. Jim rolled behind the boulder, returning fire carefully, his pulse thrumming in his ears. Bullets tore through the air, kicking up dirt around him. He couldn't stay pinned forever. Each second mattered, and so did the ledger. A sharp realization hit. The men were disciplined, but not coordinated. Jim exploited the shadows, moving low, weaving between rocks. One of the men, thinking Jim had ducked too far, exposed himself. Jim's rifle cracked. The man went down with a grunt. The second man lunged, reckless. Jim sidestepped, grabbing a fallen branch to knock him off balance. He barely had time to catch his breath before realizing he had to move faster. The ledger was heavy in his pack. Proof of murder and corruption, too valuable to lose. Suddenly, the agent's voice rang out, amplified by a distant whistle. "Blake, stop! Federal backup is here." The second man froze, eyes wide. In moments, the clearing was filled with uniformed agents, surrounding Thompson's men. Jim exhaled, exhaustion threatening to overtake him. He clutched the ledger to his chest, the last piece of the puzzle finally secure. The agents handcuffed the intruders, leading them away. One turned, glaring at Jim. "This isn't over. The sheriff will know you took it." Jim looked at the ledger, at the proof of murder and theft. For the first time in weeks, hope returned. He mounted his horse, feeling the wind on his face, the sun low and forgiving. The reckoning had begun, and this time, Jim held the cards. Dodge City had never felt smaller. Word of the ledger's discovery spread like wildfire. Every man, woman, and child whispered about Jim Blake, the girl who spoke the truth, and the sheriff now facing undeniable evidence. The streets that had once avoided Jim now cleared in anticipation, as if the town itself waited for justice to speak. Jim returned to the courthouse under federal escort. Rose rode beside him, silent, eyes fixed on the dusty street ahead. Both knew that nothing could be undone. What was done had to be faced openly. Inside, Sheriff Thompson sat at the defense table, calm as ever, but this calm no longer carried confidence. The ledger had been laid on the judge's desk, each page a damning record of murder, theft, and deception. The courtroom was tense. Lawyers, townsfolk, and deputies all leaned forward, hungry for the moment when truth would strike. The agent cleared his throat. "Sheriff Eli Thompson, you are charged with murder and theft of federal property. The evidence is undeniable. The witness is here, and your accomplices have confessed." Thompson's lips twitched into a faint smile. "You think a book proves guilt?" he said, voice steady. "The law is more than paper." Jim's jaw tightened. He felt Rose's hand brush his arm. Steadying, supportive, but tinged with fear. The sheriff's gaze locked on Jim. There was no malice now, only calculation. A predator cornered, but still dangerous. The judge called for order. Witnesses took the stand. Each one corroborated Rose's testimony, confirming the ledger's contents. The weight of evidence was overwhelming. Thompson's supporters squirmed, whispering among themselves, realizing the sheriff's power was finally being dismantled. But Thompson was not done. He stood, voice rising. "This town owes me its peace. You think you can destroy that with ink and testimony? You are blind to the consequences." His words reverberated, attempting to shake confidence. Jim stepped forward, calmly placing the ledger on the table. "This town deserves truth," he said firmly, "not lies hidden behind a badge." A hush fell over the room. Even Thompson seemed caught off guard by the conviction in Jim's voice. The sheriff's face hardened. "You may have paper," he said, "but fear keeps order. You have no idea what you're doing." Jim replied steadily, "I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving people a choice, to live in lies or live in truth." Rose stood beside him, trembling but strong. Her voice rang clear. "I saw what he did. I won't let him hide it." The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Deputies, townspeople, lawyers, everyone realized that the moment of reckoning had arrived. Thompson's men shifted uneasily. Their loyalty wavered, uncertain if their master could still command fear against the weight of truth. One by one, eyes turned to the ledger, to Rose, to Jim, and finally to the law itself. The judge's gavel struck sharply. This court finds the evidence compelling. Sheriff Eli Thompson is to be held accountable pending trial under federal law. Murmurs erupted. Some shouted their approval. Others muttered disbelief. The sheriff's smirk faltered, then disappeared entirely. Thompson was led away in cuffs, head high but powerless. Jim watched, exhaustion and relief washing over him in equal measure. He turned to Rose. She met his gaze, eyes glistening, both from fear and triumph. Outside, the streets seemed different. The air felt lighter. Dodge City had witnessed its own redemption, not through the fear of a badge, but through the courage of a few who refused to look away. Jim placed a hand on the ledger, now evidence of a reckoning that no one could erase. He breathed deeply, the weight of weeks pressing on him, then slowly lifting. Rose whispered, "It's finally over." Jim nodded, looking at the town he had risked everything for. "For now," he said, "but truth always comes with a price." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the prairie in gold and crimson. Justice had been served, but the lessons, scars, and choices lingered, reminders that bravery and conscience could change the world, even if only a small town in Kansas. Weeks had passed since Sheriff Thompson was taken into federal custody. Dodge City began to breathe again, slowly, as if awakening from a long, suffocating nightmare. The saloons buzzed with cautious conversation. Streets no longer held the tension of whispered threats. And though some eyes remained wary, most looked toward the future, uncertain but free from fear. Jim Blake returned to his ranch. The buildings were intact, but the memories of violence and betrayal lingered like shadows across the dry wood and sun-bleached fences. He worked quietly, repairing fences, checking livestock, and letting the rhythm of the land restore a sense of normalcy. Rose Miller, no longer forced into hiding, visited frequently. Each day, they rode together across the prairie, sharing small conversations that reminded them of life beyond the courtroom and the threat of bullets. Her laughter, once rare and guarded, began to echo freely again, lifting the weight of weeks of fear. One morning, as the sun climbed slowly over the horizon, painting the land with gold, Rose turned to Jim. "Do you ever wonder if it could have gone differently?" she asked. Her voice was calm, reflective. Jim wiped his hands on his pants and looked at her. "Every day," he admitted. "But fear wouldn't have let us do what had to be done. Sometimes survival isn't enough." They rode in silence for a time, watching the prairie stretch endlessly. In those quiet moments, the enormity of their journey settled in. The town had been forced to face the truth, and they had survived the cost. And yet, survival alone wasn't what mattered. It was what they chose to do with that survival. The ledger, the concrete proof of the courier's murder and the sheriff's crimes, had been sent to federal authorities for safekeeping. Its contents would secure a fair trial, prevent the corruption from spreading, and serve as a record of courage. Jim understood the significance. He had risked everything to ensure that paper, that truth, had meaning. At dusk, they returned to the ranch, the wind carrying the scent of grass and distant fires. Jim set down his rifle, looking at the horizon. He felt something he hadn't in weeks, a calm, fragile hope. The next day, Jim and Rose visited the town square. A small crowd had gathered, curious, hesitant. Some nodded in respect. Others averted their gaze, still unsure whether to trust those who had dared defy the sheriff. But for the first time, no one challenged them. No one threatened them. The town had shifted, quietly, irrevocably. Rose approached the fountain at the center, letting her fingers trace the water's ripples. "It's strange," she said, "to be seen and still feel invisible." Jim rested beside her. "You're not invisible," he said. "You're the reason people are learning what courage looks like. They'll remember." For a moment, the prairie wind carried a sense of peace that seemed almost impossible after so much chaos. The sun reflected in the fountain, glinting off the rippling water like sparks of hope. Jim realized that though Dodge City had been forever changed, so had he. The weight of choices, fear, and morality had forged a man who understood that doing the right thing often meant standing alone. As they walked back toward the ranch, children ran by, laughing. Farmers called greetings from fences. It wasn't a perfect town, far from it, but it was alive and awake. And that was enough. Later, under the stars, Jim and Rose sat by the fire. The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that held both memory and possibility. Rose leaned her head on Jim's shoulder. "We made it," she whispered. Jim nodded, feeling a deep, steady calm. "Yes," he said. "We made it. And now it's our turn to live." The ledger, the testimony, the struggle, all of it had led to this moment. Justice had been served, and the town had learned that courage and conscience could bend even the most corrupt power. But more than that, Jim and Rose had discovered something rarer. A future they could shape together, unbound by fear, guided by the knowledge that standing for truth, no matter the cost, had the power to change lives. As the fire crackled and the prairie stretched endlessly into the night, they both understood this was more than survival. It was the beginning of something new. A life built on honesty, courage, and the unshakable bond forged in the crucible of justice. And for the first time in a long time, Dodge City slept peacefully, knowing that sometimes the right choice was worth every risk.